It's my pleasure to welcome Hendrik Huettermann, Stefan Berger, and Max Reinwald, whose paper Power to the People and Then, a multi-level leadership perspective on organizational decentralization, was recently published in Human Resources Management. The paper was jointly written with Heike Bruch. Welcome all. I have several questions for you today, and one of them, the first one is, why is your study important?
Okay, thank you, Jelena. Maybe I can start in and maybe explain a little to you. Well, our research started with a very simple observation, actually, and that is that in recent years, many companies tend to rely on, let's say, less hierarchical forms of organization and implement, for example, HR policies that are aimed at granting employees more autonomy, decision-making authority. Some examples may include, for example, holacracy that you might have heard of, self-managing organizations, self-managing teams, or empowering HR practices. And what companies, of course, hope to achieve is better performance. So by decentralizing their structures, introducing flatter hierarchies, and transferring decision-making authority down the hierarchy, they hope to motivate employees to take more agency and thereby contribute more to organizational performance. However, there's quite a striking gap between what organizations do and what scientific evidence tells us. And in fact, existing research on potential performance gains of such decentralized forms of organization is largely inconsistent. So sometimes decentralization has been found to increase performance. Some studies have found it to hamper performance, and some studies have found even no relationship at all. And this is where our research comes into play. So the goal of our study was to illuminate these prior inconsistent findings and understand how organizations can ensure that such decentralized forms of organizing bring about their intended positive effects on company performance. And to this end, we took an innovative approach in, let's say, two steps maybe. So first, we wanted to look at employees' individual reactions to decentralized structures. This is new because prior research has mostly implicitly assumed that all employees react identically when they are given more autonomy, more decision-making authority in decentralized organizations. We, by contrast, we propose that there will be significant differences depending on how employees' immediate work context looks like and whether it matches with these decentralized structures or not. And as for these individual reactions, we focused in particular on the extent to which employees emerged as informal leaders in response to decentralized structures or not. So in how far do employees actually used the autonomy granted by decentralization and situationally take over leadership responsibility. That was the first thing we wanted to find out. And the second was that we investigated a critical success factor, of decentralization, and that is empowering leadership by formal leaders. So the idea was that only when employees have an empowering direct formal supervisor, then they will be able to make effective use of the greater autonomy that they are granted by decentralized structures. So only when their supervisor provides them with autonomy in the daily work as well, maybe expresses confidence in their abilities, and supports them in making meaning of what decentralization means for them personally, then they will show more informal leadership. So in sum, our idea was that only when decentralized structures come along with empowering leadership by direct formal supervisors, will employees make use of the greater autonomy, and decentralized organizations emerge more as informal leaders and thereby contribute more to company success.
Thank you for that. So what did you find in your study?
Yeah, here can take over. To study the relationships that Hendrik mentioned, we collected survey data from almost 6,000 employees that worked in 144 companies in Germany, covering different sizes of companies and different industries. And we were able to match these data with objective time-lagged performance information using the company's balance sheets. In the first step, we then indeed found that there was no direct relationship between a company's level of decentralization and its objective lagged performance, which is in line with what Hendrik mentioned earlier and also nicely reflects the existing research on this matter. However, then, in line with our predictions, we did find support for the micro-foundational path of our model, that is, decentralization had a positive effect on employees' informal leadership emergence, but only when they were simultaneously also empowered by their direct supervisors. And this increased informal leadership emergence then in turn yielded a positive effect on the organization's subsequent performance. We then also performed a variety of robustness checks to examine whether these results were robust, and no matter what we threw at them, it was quite robust overall. Maybe to make this a bit more practical, we also estimated the dollar value of empowering leadership in our sample, and now I have to look at the paper to get the numbers right. But what we found is that in a decentralized organization, which we consider as equivalent to +1 standard deviation above the sample mean of decentralization, a 1 standard deviation increase in empowering leadership indirectly via emergent leadership raised annual sales on average by more than 47,000 euros per employees, which represents more than 9% of the mean annual sales per employee of the companies in our sample. So I think that nicely illustrates the big effect empowering leadership can have in these organizations.
So what is it in your research? What are the implications of your research for theory?
Yeah, from a theoretical perspective, I would say we have a nice contribution to the debate about decentralization and the performance benefits for organizations. So as Hendrik already mentioned, there's somehow a puzzle, right? Sometimes decentralization has positive implications for organization performance and sometimes not. And past work has looked at it from a collective perspective under the umbrella of kind of opportunities and constraints. So the idea is that organizational structures offer some sort of opportunities for employees to show some sort of behaviors and also at the same time try to restrict undesired behaviors. So in the context of decentralization, this would mean that decentralized structures, so when organizations reduce the line of command, give more kind of autonomy and freedom to their employees, they offer a range of opportunities like kind of taking over leadership responsibility, particularly in an informal way. And this would mean that kind of the more people show informal leadership, also kind of the company should benefit from this. However, we argued that when organizations decentralize their structure, kind of this opportunity signal is not kind of strong enough that employees really change their behaviors, or at least all employees change their behaviors. So we need something else to kind of reinforce this rather ambiguous signal of decentralized structures. And so we basically say and answer 3 important questions. So we try to understand how employees perceive those structures, to understand how they make sense of those structures, and most importantly also how organizations can kind of shape the perception of those structures actively by empowering leadership. So what we do is that we complement this kind of theoretical perspective of organizational opportunities and constraints, which is basically an organizational level perspective with kind of a more micro level perspective, drawing on leadership and particularly empowering leadership. So we develop a multi-level theory of leadership and structure for organization, where we particularly highlight the role of empowering leadership in kind of managing and shaping the reactions and behaviors of employees within an organization in response to decentralized structure.
So this actually logically leads to the next question, which is, what do your results mean for HR policy or the practice of HR?
Well, I think our research holds several valuable implications for organizational practice. Maybe we can highlight 3 of them. The first one is quite a simple one, but an important one if we look at current trends in organizations, and that is our results indicate that there should be no blind enthusiasm regarding decentralized forms of organization and HR policies that are aimed at transferring authority and autonomy down the organizational hierarchy. Rather, our findings show that decentralized decision-making does not automatically lead to better organizational performance. And importantly, this pattern that we find holds across over 100 companies from different industries. So I think this is the first insight, which is more of a cautionary note, if you want. The second implication is that to realize the strategic benefits that many companies expect with regard to decentralized decision-making, a combination of formal and informal leadership is key. So if organizations implement structural or HR policies that are intended to grant employees greater autonomy and want to inspire them to take on leadership responsibility themselves, they should reflect on the question, how will employees interpret the signals sent by these policies, and when are they likely to make effective use of the greater autonomy? So decentralized decision-making does not mean formal leadership should be abolished. Not at all. Rather, new forms of organization and modern HR practices require a different kind of formal leadership, leadership that helps employees to make sense of these policies and understand what they mean for them personally. So what is expected from them and how they can make effective use of the increased autonomy in their daily work. And the third implication, which is closely related, is that we find out that empowering leadership is a key success factor in decentralized organizations, because empowering leaders can provide color and meaning to the often rather abstract principles that are associated with decentralized decision-making in employees' daily work, so in the immediate work context. So leaders that grant autonomy, foster participation, express confidence in followers' abilities, and enhance the meaningfulness of work for their followers can help to realize the strategic benefits of decentralized organizations. And I think this is particularly important from an HR perspective. So I think HR should focus on promoting empowering leadership, in particular in decentralized organizations, for example, when selecting, training, or appraising former leaders.
Wow, that sounds really interesting and very practical. And I guess that many of these things can immediately be applied to practice. So thank you very much for all these details. And I am at this moment going to just thank you again for participating in this interview. And I hope to see you at some other point and discuss some other topic with you again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.